Hello everyone, Dr. Hatami is here. In this short video, we're going to talk about the chemistry of life regarding molecules of life. What does it mean, molecules of life? Actually, we call these molecules as biomolecules. As bio means life. Or we also can call them as macromolecules because these molecules are so large and complex. And we need to break them down in our body to be able to absorb them. Or we can call them as organic molecules. Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about these molecules. What are the molecules of life? The molecules of life are organic molecules which contain carbon and hydrogen ion, and they are associated with cells. So all living things are made up of special molecules which are called biomolecules, macromolecules, or like the molecules of life. These are the building blocks of life, and they do different jobs in our bodies. So we have four major molecule of life or biomolecule. We have carbohydrates, we have lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Because as I mentioned, these molecules are so large and complex, and we call them as macromolecules, so their building block would be monomers. So monomers are small building blocks for macromolecules, as macromolecules are so big and they are actually made by joining many monomers together. For example, carbohydrate like starch is a large and complex molecule, is a macromolecule. So their building block would be monomer like monosaccharide like glucose. So it means we should have many glucose molecule to make a starch molecule. Lipids is another macromolecule. So if we break them down, the monomer would be fatty acid. So it means fatty acid and glycerol, they join together to make the lipid. And protein is also another macromolecule. So if we break them down, the monomer would be amino acids. So many amino acids join to form proteins. And then finally we have nucleic acid. Nucleic acids, their monomer is nucleotide. So many nucleotides join to form the nucleic acids like DNA or RNA. So as I mentioned, we actually cannot absorb the macromolecules directly. We have to break them down into their monomers, and then we can use their monomers like glucose or fatty acid or amino acid or nucleotide in our body. Now we're going to talk about each of these macromolecules one by one. Let's talk about the carbohydrate, which carbohydrate we can call this as the body's energy molecule. So body is going to use the carbohydrate as the energy source. Carbohydrates are the molecule. They have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in their molecule, and we can say the ratio of the like hydrogen to oxygen is 2:1. So they are the body's main energy source, but plants can use them as the like to provide their structure. For example, the plant's cell wall is made up of carbohydrate. So not always carbohydrate is energy source in plant cell, they can be structural as well. Okay. So we have actually different type of carbohydrates based on their simplicity or complexity. So we are going to divide our carbohydrates to simple and complex based on the like amount of like saccharide or sugar they have in their structure. We are going to have monosaccharide and disaccharide as the simple carbohydrate. As in monosaccharide, we only have one sugar unit, and in disaccharide, we have two sugar units. So simple carbohydrates include monosaccharides, which are made up of single sugar units, which the most common monosaccharide is glucose, which our body is using the glucose for quick energy, as our brain actually needs the glucose to make energy. And then disaccharides are made up of two sugar molecules, such as sucrose, table sugar, or lactose, the milk sugar. Some people actually cannot digest the lactose because they do not have the enzyme to digest the lactose, which is called lactose intolerance. And then let's talk about the complex type of carbohydrate. The complex carbohydrate are called polysaccharide. So we can have polysaccharide in these three types, which means they are made up of many sugar units joined together. We have a starch. Starch is the energy source in plant. In plant cells, like potato cell, we have starch. Fiber, also called as cellulose, it's another type of polysaccharide, but actually this fiber or cellulose is going to be found in plants, and it's actually gonna provide structural support for plants. So the cellulose or fibers in our body cannot be digested as we do not have enzyme to digest the cellulose. So, but it's actually very helpful for our digestive system. So then we have glycogen is another polysaccharide or complex carbohydrate, which is actually would be the energy source in animal cells. Okay, so let's review it one more time. We have simple carbohydrate, we have complex carbohydrate, simple carbohydrate, we have monosaccharide, one sugar unit, disaccharide, two sugar unit, the best example glucose, lactose, sucrose, and then for carbohydrate as complex carbohydrate or polysaccharide, we can have these types: starch, fibers, glycogen. Okay, so in this picture, actually, you can see the polysaccharide, the complex carbohydrate. That is a potato cell that you can see how we have the cellulose in their in the cell wall, and then how we have like starch granule in their cytoplasm as the energy source for in plants. And this is the liver cells, the animal cells, that you can see glycogen granule, which means that we are going to store glycogen in liver cells to as an energy source. And this is also showing the plant cell wall, which we have cellulose or fiber, which, as I mentioned, we cannot digest them, but is very helpful for our digestive system. So we talked about actually the different type of carbohydrates, simple, like monosaccharide, glucose, disaccharide, like lactose, and also we talked about these different type of polysaccharide, the starch, glycogen, and cellulose. Okay, and now it's time to talk about lipids. Lipids like fats and oils. Lipids are molecules which they are non-polar molecule. They do not dissolve in water, which is polar molecule, right? And they become in many forms and have different jobs in their body, in our body. So we can find the lipid as triglyceride, phospholipid, and best example for triglyceride is like fats and oil. So they store long-term energy. That's the reason we are going to store fat in our cells, like in our fat cells. In our fat cell, we have a big lipid droplet, which in this lipid droplet, we are going to store triglyceride, as it's a long-term energy. And also this triglyceride is providing insulation and Cochan's organs. So that's the reason in fat cells, in fat tissue, we have a lot of triglyceride. Then the another type of lipid, which is my favorite, is phospholipid. The phospholipid is a primary component of the plasma membrane. It makes up cell membrane, and which the cell membrane is the protective barrier around the cells, which gonna separate the inside of the cell from outside of the cell. Phospholipids also are amphipathic molecules, which means that they have one like hydrophilic side and another hydrophobic side, and that's the reason in our plasma membrane we have actually two layers of phospholipid. So in this way, their like hydrophilic head would be toward the water molecule inside and outside, and their hydrophobic tail would be on like their next to other. The another type of lipid is a steroid. Steroid includes cholesterol and sex hormones like estrogen and testosterone. So these all are lipids. Now let's talk about proteins. So proteins is another macromolecules, which we can call this as the body's work molecule. The body's work molecule. Okay? So proteins are made up of amino acids. So amino acids are the building block or monomers for proteins. When three or more amino acids join together, they form a polypeptide. Proteins can change their shape if they're exposed to extreme heat or changes of the pH, which this process is called denaturation. And it stops the protein from working properly. So for example, if you do some experiment and then the pH of the environment that enzyme should work in, or the temperature is not the optimal temperature, so it means that the enzyme, which is protein, it cannot work properly anymore. Let's talk about the different type of proteins that we have in our body and their important functions. We have protein like creatine. So creatine is a protein. We have enzyme as protein. We have carrier protein and channel protein. We have antibodies. These are proteins. We have hormones as protein. We have actin and myosin as contractile protein. So these are some examples of protein that we have in our body, and let's focus on their job. As I mentioned, creatine is a protein that would be found in our hair and nail. Creatine is going to kind of gives like kind of hardness to our hair and also nail. And don't forget, collagen is another type of protein which would be found in our skin. We have collagen in our tendon, in our ligaments. So they're gonna give support to these structures. So the creatine and collagen are the example of protein that we can find in our hair, in our nail, in our skin, in our tendon, which their job is to support. So we can say one of the important protein function is to support. The best example, creatine and collagen. Then we have enzymes. So enzymes are proteins. Enzymes are important because they're actually going to speed up the chemical reactions in cells. Honestly, without enzymes, we are not able to digest the food properly. So it takes years to like digest the food into their smaller pieces or to the nutrients, and then we can absorb them properly. So it means that enzymes are super important in our body, and they are made up of protein. Protein also going to be involved in transportation. What does it mean, transportation? Transportation of the substances across the plasma membrane, as we have proteins as channel or carrier found in cell membrane. So these structures are going to allow substances to leave and enter the cell and or transport molecules in the blood, also made up of the protein molecule. So transportation is another protein's function. Can you believe that? The protein can also be able to do defense, as antibodies are proteins. So the antibodies can bind to the foreign substances like antigen and like disable them. so it would be involved in defense of our body as well. Don't forget the hormones. We have some hormones which they are made up of protein and they act as chemical messenger. They can send these signals from one like cell or tissue or glands to another structure and control them. Also, the protein can be involved in motion or movement as contractile proteins, which going to be found in muscle cell or protein. Like actin is a protein, myosin is a protein. So they're gonna kind of make the or help the muscle to contract and make movement. Okay, so far we talked about the carbohydrate, lipids, proteins, their main function, their different type of molecule, and now let's talk about the nucleic acid. Nucleic acid is responsible to store information, and also we have the nucleic acid as energy molecule. The nucleic acid are macromolecule. These are polymers and made up of nucleotides. So nucleotide is the monomer for nucleic acid. So in like component of the nucleotide, it has phosphate molecule and also it has the 5-carbon sugar and also it has nitrogen base. What is the function of the nucleic acid? So they have important functions in our body. They can store information. What information? All information we need to build proteins and then all instruction that a cell needs to do its job. So DNA holds instruction for building proteins and copying itself. And also they help make proteins, like RNA reads DNA instruction and helps make protein. So they contain the instruction for activities essential to life, like synthesizing hormones, synthesizing protein, and also synthesizing enzyme. And all of the activity and every activity a cell can do that, their information or the instruction would be found in our nucleic acids. And also, so then it would conduct the chemical reaction as well. But what about providing energy? So here, as you can see, the best example of the nucleic acid is DNA. And then we have RNA and we have ATP. So these are the types of nucleic acid. As we mentioned, DNA would be found in cell. It's gonna have instruction for everything or gonna control everything in our cells, in our body. They store information on how to copy themselves, and also there specifies the order of the amino acid in proteins, and then RNA, which is going to reads the DNA instruction and helps make protein, and then finally the adenosine triphosphate ATP is going to store the energy. So ATP is the like energy current in our body. When ATP is broken into the ADP and phosphate, it releases energy for activities like making macromolecules, muscle contraction, nerve signals, and moving molecules in our cell. So the ATP is the energy carrier or the energy current in our body. Is a high energy molecule and we need to break it down, then we are going to release energy as we're going to break the ATP to the ADP and energy that we need for all the activities and actions happening in our cells and in our body. So ATP is another type of nucleic acid. So in this short video, we talked about the different type of macromolecules which only going to be found in living cells, like in animal cells, in plants. So then these macromolecules are so large and complex and we need to break them down into their monomers, then we can absorb them, then we can use them in our cells, in our body. So we talked about the carbohydrate, we talked about the lipid, we talked about proteins and nucleic acid, their different types and also their different functions. Thank you for your time.